Aditya Birla Group presents Budget 2015, the Make in India Budget, co-presented by SBI. What the world wants.
Welcome back. We've been speaking with Jim Walker, the Managing Director of Asianomics, and Sanjeev Sanyal of Deutsche Bank on what the world expects from India. Jim, before we went into the break, we were talking about Sanjeev expecting a lot from the Reserve Bank. What's your own take? Do you think the Reserve Bank has got a lot of leeway, that it has more or less reined in inflation around the 5% mark? How much of interest rate cuts are you expecting?
Yes, I think Sanjeev was spot on when he was saying that there's substantial scope for interest rate cuts. We've been looking for between 100 and 150 basis points in rate cuts this year. I still think we're going to get them. I must admit, I don't really understand the Reserve Bank's strategy at the moment. I don't really understand why it would cut interest rates in January, 2 weeks or so before a monetary policy committee meeting, and then have an MPC meeting and say, well, there's been no substantive moves further that would allow us to cut again. That just doesn't make any sense to me. The substantive moves in India have been happening for the last 4 years with the deceleration in money and credit aggregates. That has put inflation completely under control in India, and it's now time for the Reserve Bank to get a bit more aggressive, start cutting 25, 50 basis points maybe on a meeting, and get interest rates down 150 basis points by the end of this year. As Sanjeev says, helps the government, helps corporates tremendously in terms of business costs, and will just improve the fiscal position and economic growth rate in India substantially.
Since you are at a perch where you can even watch how the global trends are moving, Jim, what's your sense? Can India continue to expect a benign commodity cycle? We saw, of course, crude prices, at least for the near term, bottoming out at $45. What will 2015 hold in terms of crude prices in particular and commodity prices in general? Can India take some hope that this cycle will continue?
Yes, I think so. Our view of China, and China really is one of the main driving factors for commodity prices, is that we're still between 3 and 5% GDP growth this year, and that GDP growth will be very substantially driven by the services sector rather than by manufacturing, property or infrastructure. So therefore the resource intensity growth in China could even actually be negative. We could see substantial, I think, falls in demand for iron ore, oil and other commodities. And that leaves us short the commodity complex as one of our global strategy calls. And I don't think we'll be changing that for 2015. So I think we can look forward in India, where that's a significant positive for the economy. We can look forward to low global commodity prices for the full year, if not for the next 2 to 3 years.
Jim, you were very confident that India is going to find a great deal of tax revenues because of a much more improved growth situation in 2015 or in FY16. Where do you think that trigger comes from? We've just put behind a fairly disappointing earnings season, among the most disappointing in several years.
Yeah, although I think that's really the trigger. I think we've now seen the trigger, which is that we've seen a bottom in the earnings cycle. Companies have been deleveraging in India. Balance sheets have been improved upon. There's been cuts in capital expenditure over the course of the last couple of years, despite what the GDP numbers say. And that, of course, is the element in the business cycle which always cleans out companies, that allows them to get back on a level footing. If we then see interest rate cuts, it gets business costs down further. And what we're at the moment is just the bottom of the cycle in business terms. That's the trigger. Businesses by nature want to grow, and they want to find opportunities for more profit and for more growth. And I think that that's what faces Indian companies going forward.
Well, actually, when we speak to a lot of India Inc. representatives, corporates, there isn't that confidence that they're going to see growth over the next 3, 4, 5 quarters. Some people even put it at 6 quarters. Where do you expect the trigger for growth to come from? Will this big interest rate cuts that both of you are expecting be the big trigger? Or do you expect that the government should do and will do some essential pump priming, maybe some big infrastructure spend?
I think, first of all, you have to be clear that a reduction in interest rates is a necessary, but it is not a sufficient condition for getting a long growth cycle out of this. So, yes, you need a significant reduction in interest rates, but of course you need policies being put in place to take advantage of it. Now, some of that are general cleanups, for example, reducing corruption, which I think a major initiative on that is happening right as we speak. And of course, it would be wonderful to get the infrastructure cycle going again. Part of that is, of course, bringing interest rates down, but also putting in place a roadmap of, these are the kinds of infrastructure projects that will come on stream at this point in time. That would give a great deal of clarity to companies on how to go about investing. So I think the key here is not just looking at the budget for what are the fiscal numbers going to be, but to get a sense of what is the future plan, so to speak.
Okay. Well, Jim, you were very clear that, you're not in, you don't want to join the herd in terms of this budget hype, and that the government should be an ongoing and is likely to be an ongoing performer. Generally, what are you expecting from policymakers?
Well, as I said, as long as they make the commitment to medium-term fiscal consolidation and make it in a serious and credible way, not producing massive revenue forecasts and massive expenditure cuts that we know that won't happen. As long as it's a credible budget with an overarching strategy of really just moving forward incrementally, then I think they can start to do things around the edges which don't need to be announced in the budget. They can be a different set of policies. For example, there will be disinvestment of some sorts in India over the course of the next few years. I'm quite sure about that. I think the states hold a lot of the cards here. I think one of the big successes of Narendra Modi was that he was elected as a chief executive of Gujarat for his success in getting the state moving. The centre can play a huge role in allowing competition between states to get the economy moving at the state level. And these are the kinds of things that I would really want to see the government focusing on, rather than trying to do too much at the centre.
Once again, Jim, from your perch in Hong Kong, where you watch investors look at a whole lot of asset classes and markets, India kind of benefited being perhaps the least dirty shirt in an otherwise dirty laundry in 2014. Will India be one of the leading lights? Where would you place it in terms of asset markets or equity markets in a pecking order, in your pecking order?
Well, we have an overweight in India in our regional portfolio, but we've also got India as one of our high conviction global strategy calls. So it's not just a question of saying that India is looking a bit better than other people around the region or around the emerging market universe. Our confidence is much, much more far-reaching than that, that this is the next 5 to 10 years of an India story that has never been told before, where the government is beginning to get its act together, just levelling the playing field. Interest rates will be falling, growth will be accelerating through the business cycle, the economy is much more connected through mobile technology, the internet. Everything is falling in place for India to have just a massive 5 to 10 years. And that's what we want our clients to participate in. That's why it's an overweight globally for us rather than just regionally.
Well, this is a glorious point at which to end this conversation. But Sanjeev is an economic historian. Sanjeev, you agree with that? You will echo that view? You will be that optimistic?
Yeah, absolutely. Many of the preconditions for a long growth boom are falling in place. The demographics are in place. There is an opportunity here to bring down the cost of capital very, very significantly. The government is working, slowly perhaps, but it is working quite steadily towards changing a number of structural problems, including dealing with corruption on a major scale. And, you know, there will be niggling problems over land acquisition and so on, but I am sure that will get ironed out, given that we know the government is focusing on it. So I think the opportunity is certainly there for a really long, good, innings.
Sanjeev, Jim, thank you very much for joining me in this conversation. That's a high note on which to end this edition of What the World Wants from India.
Aditya Birla Group presents Budget 2015, the Make in India Budget, co-presented by SBI. What the world wants.